Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back NHL edition. LeBrun, Rishaug, and MJ, yes, Mystic Mike Johnson, standing by. We're going to break down a bunch of stuff around the National Hockey League today. What's going on with all these benchings all over the place? These are good players getting benched, too. Holy snap, the coaches have had it. Well, some of them anyway. Got Your Back brought to you by Kuma Outdoor Gear. They've got a wide range of gear to fit all your outdoor needs. From tents and sleeping bags and travel games and pet products and drinkware. And they are fired up about their new Switchback heated chair. World's first heated chair powered by Bluetooth technology. It's got dual heat zones in the back and in the seat. And you can adjust it from your phone. It's amazing. We've had a couple of driveway parties the last few weeks. And the Switchback heated chairs have been the stars of the party. Kuma Outdoor Gear. Experience luxury outdoors. As we say hello to the fellas, Mike Johnson, Pierre, LeBrun. MJ, weren't you just doing a game? Weren't you just in a different city?
Listen, the things I do to have the privilege of talking with you this early in the morning, Shoggy, like there's no end to which I will not jump on a plane to make sure I can make it for this early in the morning. Yes, I was in Montreal last night, back in Toronto today, and delighted to be with you and Pierre with the Hartford Whalers smiling at me every morning.
What time did you lay your head down on the pillow? Did you fly in last night or?
No, I had my 6 a.m. flight out of Montreal this morning.
Oh,
so
gross.
It was a 12:30 to 4:30 sleep.
Yeah.
And after I talk to you, there'll be another 4 hours tacked onto that here at the the
But
Pierre, you like the early morning flights.
Yeah, that's a smart way to go, though. I like trying to avoid morning traffic, especially in places like Montreal and Toronto, and getting to the airport with less hassle. That's a veteran move by MJ there.
It was pretty good. Like my flight was at 6. I was in my house at 7:40. It's pretty quick. So
any travel tips? Like you guys are both on the road a ton. I'm not traveling maybe quite as much as I once did, but I'm out there a fair amount. What would be your best travel tip, gentlemen? Like some sort of, maybe for people who aren't out there a lot. It's a new world to try and travel in right now. MJ, what keeps you sane?
I would say when the weather gets bad, take first flights out. Well, it stinks to get up and take 6 or 6:30 a.m. flights. They're the ones that are most likely to not be delayed and be available.
It's a good
and
point
if you're going to cross the border from Canada into the States, try not to go Monday morning at rush hour.
Yeah.
Because that's the busiest time when there's a ton of business people going back and forth.
I mean,
those are gooders.
You do those two things, you'll be okay.
I mean, obviously this is maybe too obvious, but I don't know how anyone in our business doesn't have Nexus. It makes a world of difference. But also planes that sleep on the tarmac from the night before and are waiting there for you, those are your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And is there a way to figure that out? Is there a way to know if the plane that you're taking was the plane?
Yes. The proper apps, you can get the incoming flight and you know if they arrived that morning or if they arrived the previous evening. Yes.
That is some inside ball travel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So much value.
Ryan, you know, like you and I traveled together a bit there the last couple of years in the playoffs.
We did, yeah.
I just do my thing, as you know. It's not that I'm selfish. It's that
Listen,
I'm organized.
No, we're good
Pierre,
travel partners.
If I travel with someone who doesn't have Nexus, I'll see you at the gate. Like, I'm not walking through the line with you.
Red card, yellow card.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we'll decide that later. But
so
just be forewarned, I will not be waiting.
You're a selfish travel partner, hey? Okay, here's another question for you, and maybe we'll do an impromptu red card, yellow card, no card. You're clearly traveling with somebody else, right? So you're same departure place, same destination place, working on the same gig. You're basically on a little mini team there, Johnny. You have club access.
Not a chance.
You have club access and they don't.
I won't even go with my kids through regular security. Like, forget it. Like, get your stuff together, get a Nexus card, and get organized.
Okay, so security. So your first opportunity to bail is at security, and you take it. What about you have club access and they don't?
I'll get them in the club with me. Call me when you get there. Call me when you get to the door. I'll come get you.
Yeah. Well, what if you can't?
But I can.
Well, the other thing I would say,
so share the wealth.
But if I can't, then I'll see you at the gate and I'll be well fed.
There it is, right there. That's what I was driving at.
Yes.
So I make the call there on whether I have work. I have a column to work on, and obviously it's easier to do there than it is at the gate. And I just think that's not being mean. I got work to do. I'll meet at the gate after I'm writing my column. So that often will happen.
You're trying to shout it in like you're doing work. Shoggy, unabashed. I'm not doing work. I'm watching movies. I'm eating food, free cocktails, and I'm doing it where if you can get with me, great. If not, I'll see you at the gate.
I'll see you at the gate. I'll see you at the
see you at the gate.
destination because you stop
Yes.
at the front of the plane. Do you at least make eye contact when they walk back you to cattle class? And then when they walk past you,
I
give them a
usually
wink
try
and a
to
nod.
have some sort of sarcastic, smart alecky comment if I happen to be up front and somebody else might not
buddy.
be. Yes.
Oh, buddy. You
I'm
know,
a
this
treat.
podcast is called
I'm a
Got Your
treat.
Back. This podcast is called Got Your Back. You are almost disqualified from being a regular appearance just based on that alone.
Just be organized. We can all be riding the same way.
Oh, boy. Mike Johnson does not have your back if you're traveling together. That's a red card from me. Red card from me. Pierre, you're giving him a red card too.
No, I'm not, because I have a lot of the same habits. The difference is, for example, I will wait for someone with checked baggage once I'm there because I'm relieved that most of the travel process is done. I'm not as much in a hurry, so I will do that. So I have some leniency in my system.
You know who'll be laughing at me right now is Dave Parker, my camera guy, because there have been many times where he and I have landed and we're on a tight schedule and he's got a pile of cases to wait for and I got to carry on. And I'm like, this is going to be a 35-minute difference and I got to get showered and I got to get some work done. I'm always left with that decision. Like, you good, Park? Or it's like, no, I'll hang in. And my better self doesn't always win. I find myself taking guilty Ubers by myself to the hotel.
There you go, Shoggy. We're all the same. We're all the same. Now, the difference is if the hotel is close, I'll hang. If it's kind of far, I'm like,
we'll see you there.
We'll do it. We have to go now and actually get to hockey. But one day I'd like to do a segment. I'd like to do a segment with the three of us. No, I'd like to do a segment with the three of us because I think hockey fans actually are interested in some of the NHL travel. There are a lot of NHL markets where there's a real debate about whether you stay, near the practice facility or downtown where the game day rink is. You know, LA is a great example of it's impossible to win. If you're there for a week, the Kings are always in El Segundo, which means you can stay in Manhattan Beach, which is lovely. But the game is downtown, and there's a game day tends to be a longer work day than an off day.
Pierre, you lost everybody.
No,
you just lost everybody. Nobody cares about your first world. Do I stay on Manhattan Beach?
I'm not whining. They're great choices, but it's interesting.
Where are the better bars? Where are the better golf courses? And I don't worry about morning skate, Shoggy. Don't worry about that.
See, that's the thing.
Johnny's big time. Johnny, I remember you don't worry about morning skates. I remember covering the Allen Cup with you, and you I went to morning skates, your first ever gig. What has happened to you?
The older I get, I tend to stay near the game day event as opposed to the off day fun. But
okay, this was nonsense. Everybody just skipped through all this. So let's get to the breakdown brought to you by our good friends over at Kuma Outdoor Gear. Jonathan Huberdeau sits on the bench for the entire third period. The Calgary Flames, a team that's trying to figure out how to up the standards, trying to figure out how to get some consistency in their game. A new head coach still trying to get a toehold in this league, sits his big money guy down for an entire period. We've seen this happen around the league on a few different fronts. But Johnny, let's talk specifically about Calgary last night. What message does that send? What do you make of that maneuver from Ryan Huska?
Was always know sitting someone, anyone, fourth liner, first liner, but especially a guy who's the highest paid player on your team. That's never the first option. That's not your first mistake gets you sat down. This is something that is built up to by conversations, by video sessions, by a kick in the butt and a hug on the shoulder. Like it's, you've tried everything. You're like, it's not working. So what else can I do? With the structure of contracts, the amount of money that guys make, there is one thing that coaches can do to players. One thing. Like John LeBrun has no move, you can't do anything to him except take his ice time away. That's the only lever you have to sort of motivate, push, prod, chastise, embarrass a player. And so you do it because you have no other choice. You've tried everything else. And at this point, you're like, what do I have to lose? If I lose the player, well, it's too bad because I've kind of lost him anyways. He's not playing well enough to help us. So it's kind of the last resort that coaches go to. But coaches need to be willing to do it because not only will that impact Huberdeau, Pierre, but it does also resonate through the rest of the team. You're going to sit down Huberdeau. They can certainly sit me down if I'm not getting it done. And also, always easier to do it in a game where you're winning. It's easy if you're losing 7-1, say, I'm going to send a message because the game's over. It doesn't matter. But in a game that's close, the game was up in the air like that game in Calgary was, to do it, it matters more then because you're sending it in a moment where you maybe could use him as opposed to a game that's already gone away. So lots of thought that goes into it. It's not sort of haphazard spur of the moment. It's kind of built up to over really weeks, and in Huberdeau's cases, maybe over like a year plus.
So is John Cooper to blame for this being back in the NHL? Because last March, John Cooper benched his entire top line for the Lightning in a game in Buffalo on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know if you guys remember that. And it made a lot of headlines because it's not something that we had seen that often in recent years when it comes to top players. And it went well. I mean, his players understood the message was for the whole team and not just for them. And the relationship between all those Stanley Cup champion people is so different than what we're talking about right now. But what I'm saying is, does that give every other coach in the league after John Cooper did it last year carte blanche? Because now we're seeing it left and right. And by the way, we're seeing it with rookie head coaches, Ryan Huska in Calgary, Pascal Vincent in Columbus, who benches guys every night, it seems like. And it's like, it's not just a veteran guy like John Cooper, or a veteran guy like Lindy Ruff that also did it earlier this season, but rookie head coaches who feel emboldened and clearly backed by management to do this. The other really fascinating side note here is Jonathan Huberdeau and Johnny Gaudreau both getting benched within 3 days of each other. I mean, their lives are so intertwined.
Grass is not always greener.
Well, I mean, Johnny Gaudreau made a decision to go to Columbus. Jonathan Huberdeau, I guess, didn't have to sign.
He made a decision to stay in Calgary.
But he got traded to Calgary, yeah. And
both by newer coaches too, right?
Yeah.
You know, one thing to consider, guys, and like I don't quite know what a coach general manager dynamic is, but when you scratch someone, you're it's a bit of an indictment of the player for sure, primarily. But like in Huberdeau's case, it's gone so kind of poorly. It's a bit of an indictment of the signing. You know what I mean? Like at some point you need, you probably have to have some sort of conversation with management. Like, hey, it's not going well. If he doesn't play for me, I'm gonna sit him down. I don't know how that goes, but on some level, I know Trey Living's gone, but like Craig Conroy was there when they signed Huberdeau. He was part of the recruitment process. So it's also shining a light on a bad decision by management, at least in this very moment, on a guy like Huberdeau where it just hasn't gone quite well.
Here's Ryan Huska post game.
We had an off night, and when we went into the third period, we wanted to try to get a little bit more flow, and we went with the guys we felt were going, and that's pretty much all it came down to.
How did he take that?
He's fine. Like it's not anything anybody wants to go through ever, but hey, at times it's going to happen. You're not going to have your A+ game every night, and as I said, we are trying to find a little bit of a rhythm and flow to our game, and when at that point we went with the guys we thought were going the best.
Follow-up question was if it was effort related, and he said no, he just didn't bring his A game, and it's not a big deal. So I thought Huska handled that really well post game, right? Just kind of brushed it off like it was just tonight, and we'll all move on. And my guess is he'll be on the blue line for the anthem next game.
He probably should be, but just for the record, he's not fine. Huberdeau's not fine.
Right.
He's not like it's nothing. Oh, too bad. Now there's also now, especially in a market like Calgary, Pierre, you understand the way you behave on the bench after it's been clearly established that you're not playing is going to be micro analyzed. Like, are you supportive when your team scores? Do you stand up and high five? Are you trying to encourage guys on the bench, or is your chin strap undone, your head's in the rafters, and you're pouting? And I think Huberdeau smart enough to realize that he should look engaged in trying to support his teammates, even if he wasn't part of the game anymore. I think that was smart by him. They really did diffuse it about as well as they could, but this is not nothing. Like to a player, let alone one of the caliber of Jonathan Huberdeau, this stings and it's embarrassing and it sucks and you're mad and you're angry and you're all of those things, Pierre, that he's going to try to work through and then fighting your game because of it.
Yeah, it's just been not a good fit. And of course, last year was, he didn't respond well to Daryl Sutter, and now Daryl Sutter's gone, so it'll be a bounce back year for him. It has not been. So I don't know. I mean, that has to be said, right? The other thing I will say, Bill Zito, the GM of the Panthers, I always like to go back in time and remember how a lot of people thought about certain trades. Bill Zito was the one who was criticized for that trade at the time, for trading Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau to Calgary for Matthew Tkachuk, a lot of people felt the Panthers were diminishing their core depth. 2 core players for 1 core player. That trade now, I mean, that is looking unbelievably one-sided at this moment. And again, that can change. Huberdeau
and Mackenzie Weegar is still pretty good. He's probably their Flames' best or second best defenseman. But it just no one could have, like, when you factor in how the contract they gave Huberdeau and the lack of production, it's like a double whammy.
And not only, I mean, the best player in the trade went to Florida, like bar down, and a lot of people, hands down.
One of the best players in the world.
Yeah, one of the best players in the world, who's actually probably increased his standing as that since he got there.
And one final thought, and it could be an unfair one, but you have to think about all the different angles on this, are people now going to look at Jonathan Huberdeau's big moments and seasons in Florida and say, how much was that Alexander Barkov dependent?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty special player that he played with for a long time. And I think Huberdeau also made Barkov a better player, to be fair, but it seems like life without Barkov has been very, very, very difficult for Jonathan Huberdeau.
Meanwhile, in Edmonton.
Is the Alberta show? What's going on here?
Along the same lines of accountability. So here's a question Jay Woodcroft was asked post-game.
You guys are in a tight 3-2 hockey game. You're on the road. You fought back. It's 3-2. Yep. Bouchard makes a pinch, and then he doesn't hustle back, and his guy scores, and he doesn't miss a shift. You use the word accountability a lot. Is there enough accountability for that player in that moment?
So Evan Bouchard makes a massive mistake, one of the biggest mistakes, frankly, of the season. A huge game, terrible pinch, stopped moving his feet. His guy scored. He's done this multiple times this season. If there was ever a time to sit a guy down, it's probably right there. Jay's answer, Woodcroft's answer, he basically said, we're down in a game and he's an offensive defenseman, and to take him out of the game, really hurts their chances of coming back. And that was basically what he said, right? It's hard to bench that player given the fact that you're down in a game. But Johnny, we're talking about accountability here. And here, I cover this team. Here's where I kind of hit a wall. Every single day this season, we have listened to that coach and those players talk about how individual mistakes are just killing us. Oh, man, individual mistakes are just killing us. And the head coach, it's not the system, it's individual mistakes. Well, here's the news flash. It's your job to figure out how to stop those too. So that's on your plate too. And I don't think Jay Woodcroft has figured out the right way to hold these players accountable. And we saw a prime example of it the other night. So meanwhile, a rookie coach in Calgary is sitting down a $10 million man, and these mistakes keep happening to the Edmonton Oilers.
When I prefaced the Huberdeau one, doing it in a close game, this is exactly the problem that coaches bump into. Like, they're like, of course, he'd like to sit maybe Bouchard down in that moment, yell at him, scream at him, but he's like, God, I feel like I need points more than I need to send a message. And this is the push and pull that the coaches have during the course of a game. Like, we can watch clips of Leon Draisaitl making bad plays defensively. Mm-hmm. Like, do you sit him down in the game you're trailing? You can't. You can't. Or maybe you have to. I don't know. It's not quite as easy. Now, Bouchard's much younger. He's not Draisaitl, obviously. I'm not suggesting their equivalents. But at some point, especially given the nature of the mistakes that Edmonton is making, that you have to hold guys accountable. You have to change it up. And it's a point where, like, listen, we may be worse today because one of our top players may not play very much. And so we have whatever, Broberg or Desharnais or somebody else playing more than we would like them to. But we're doing it for the longer term picture because we have to get their attention. But I understand the difficulty in making those decisions. And unfortunately, Ryan, when I watch Edmonton, if I were to watch a game, I could pick out a dozen guys like, that guy should miss a shift all the time, from their very best players to their 18th skater. We're not even going to the goaltenders yet. So, like, that's the other part of the problem. Yeah. When it's whack-a-mole, that's a perfect analogy for it.
Pierre?
I just wanted to go back. That was the voice of Mark Spector of Sportsnet asking those questions. I just want to say, he's an old pal. When he asks a question in that moment, there's so much urgency in his voice. I love how that question gets out. Okay, I just want to point that out.
Well, in fairness, and I'm not trying to big time, but I literally asked Woodcroft that question the day before that game about whether or not he's benching guys enough in game. But here's the thing, Pierre, and you know this. Not all benchings are created equally, right? There's the healthy scratching. That is the mother of all benchings, right? Yeah. That's the one that is the sonic boom. Then there's the what happened to Huberdeau. Sit for an entire period at the end of the bench, gloves off. That is like second tier. But then there's ways coaches can send messages, right? So when Bouchard does that, yeah, you need that player. But if you roll past him for 2 rotations, everyone will know what's going on. The whole bench will be like, oh, Bouch isn't playing. Oh, okay. And then you know what? You pat him on the bum, you get him right back out there because you do need him. But not all benchings are created equally. You can roll through guys, Pierre, and still send those messages. But teams pay attention. A coach is sending a message to his team with every decision he makes about what is and what is not acceptable. And the players pick up on it.
Yeah, no question. I think it should have happened by now in this Oilers season. I think the tricky thing with the Oilers is that, every team wants to have a true meritocracy. It's harder to do on teams when you have such special players. And I'm not saying McDavid or Draisaitl should have been skipped a shift. Clearly not. But my point is you see the same thing in Toronto with Marner and Matthews. Not every team where you can truly send a message and say, this could happen to any of you. No, it won't. Not on certain teams. And so what I'm trying to get to is, a benching on a team like New Jersey that's trying to take that next step. There's still, before Jack Hughes runs away and is untouchable, and again, he was the one who got benched, but there's still that sense there where they're young and Lindy Ruff has a chance to still have that meritocracy bubble. That's not happening in Edmonton. And so there's a different culture there. And so now you get into how far up the food chain are you allowed to actually bench a guy in Edmonton? You understand what I'm getting at?
Completely.
You go anywhere you want, Pierre. You go anywhere.
I agree,
you
Johnny.
Want. I'm sorry,
just saying. I think that's what's happening.
And I'm on pro player all the way. I got the players all the time. In any argument, even if I don't play that, I got the players. But Ryan, you say it's a coach's job to hold guys accountable, right? And I suppose it is. But at some point, it's the players' jobs to be professional. And it can't just be the fear of a benching, a scratch, a demotion that gets players to make the right decisions on the ice. It's not really they're not trying. Of course they're trying, but they're not making the right decisions in the right moments. And there's only so much a coach can do. Everything he does if they make a mistake is retroactive. Like, oh, I'm going to punish you for making the wrong move. But you've already made the wrong move, and we've already been hurt by it. But I think, he sat down Evander Kane very famously, and Kane has responded the right way. I'm sorry, I know Leon and Connor are in a world of their own, and yes, it takes a monumental situation before you could even think about talking to those guys.
And I'm not saying I would.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
They're almost behind San Jose. It's about time.
That's just it. It's about time, right?
They are in 31st. So it is break in case of emergency. If Leon doesn't want to stride on a back check on a Philip Forsberg wraparound in an afternoon game they got to have, then maybe he misses a shift. I don't know.
Is there a world, Johnny, and then we'll move on from this. Is there a world where Jay Woodcroft calls in his leadership group or just Leon or whoever and says, these mistakes we got to get out of our game, and I'm going to have to start hitting guys. And so we're gonna start trying to up the level of accountability, but it's going to apply to you guys too. So just know this is something I believe needs to happen for the team to get to where we want it to go. So just be prepared and heads up. We're going to do this. And if those guys nod and agree that is part of it, then you're aces.
What if they don't? What, are you not going to do it if they don't?
Well, you know what I'm saying, though? You put it to them ahead of time, and you say, look, this is the way it's going to be.
They deserve.
Exactly.
And what you need to do, Ryan, is you have that conversation, sure, because those guys are special players and a special part of your team. But what you need to do is then have that same conversation, maybe after you talk to those guys, in the whole room.
With the rest of the team.
It does not matter. Connor, Leon, whoever.
Yeah.
They're whoever it might be.
Yep.
If it happens, you're not going to play. Straight up. If you keep making the same mistakes we're talking about now for 6 weeks, you're not going to play. I don't care who it is. And then you have to follow up on it. And it would be stormy and rocky. And it would be, sort of unprecedented in Edmonton. But so was being in second last place in a year where they thought they're going to win a cup.
Can you believe the toilet bowl?
20 points behind Vegas on November 8th.
A month into the season. A month into the season, and the toilet bowl involves the Edmonton Oilers and the San Jose Sharks tonight. Pierre, Jack Campbell, that was the big news that cracked yesterday. I'm not sure what the options are out there to find a goaltender. The cap is tricky, but
Yeah.
that was a big boom across the hockey world when Jack Campbell and his 5x5 ends up getting assigned.
And this is, what I asked a question in my piece in The Athletic. I wrote about the Oilers is that, of course the Oilers internally, I know, are talking about a goalie upgrade in their front office, but who is that person realistically right now? First of all, we're early in the trade season. A lot of teams aren't ready yet to go down that route. Number two, we've talked about this a lot. We live in the world now that outside of basically 4 goalies, maybe, the trust level on goalies is so low in terms of the randomness and unpredictable nature of it all. Of course, a cynic would say when you're 32nd in save percentage, everyone's an upgrade. And then there's the price. And I talked about this on Insider Trading. Right now, the Oilers are in a terrible leverage position. It's desperation time. So if you're trying to make a trade, it's a terrible time to do it. But let's say they still do. You're paying an even higher price. But then you can't go acquire a goalie without eliminating Jack Campbell's contract from your operation. They can't coexist, those two things. So you're paying X amount of assets to get rid of Campbell's contract, and you're paying a high price for a goalie upgrade for who knows what that goalie's name is. That's a lot of assets to fix, yes, a huge problem, but how do you get that done? That's the question I have.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the discount aisle and you try to find, you just take swings at goaltenders who are on $1 million contracts, which are kind of a net sum game with what you buried from Jack Campbell. Is that you shopping for Alex Lyon?
Right.
You calling about James Reimer? Are you, Sam Montembeault not going to be extended? Are you calling about those kind of the teams that have 3 goaltenders? Are you calling Yarrow Halak off the PTO pile?
Here's another one for you, John.
These are players they can afford, without worrying about that second piece of the transaction.
So take a flyer on something
Campbell's salary,
and it doesn't work. Then you take a flyer. If it doesn't work, then you move on from that person too.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I guess.
Here's another one for you.
Risky. But that's
Darren Dreger mentioned on Insider Trading the other night, Pierre, about maybe they need to start digging into some of their futures to fix their problems now.
Right.
So what about the Nashville Predators and Yaroslav Askarov? Right? Great numbers in the minors. They've got Saros on another year. So Nashville has another year with Saros right there.
Mm-hmm.
And Askarov he's a 1.6 goals against average, .935 save percentage. He's 21 years old. It would take a lot because he's their goalie of the future, but he's working out and he's playing well. And no, he doesn't have the NHL experience yet, but maybe you dig into your assets to fix your biggest problem.
Well, that's the wrong Nashville goalie I'd be going after. Because as promising as Askarov's career looks to be, there's still the unknown quantity of goalies in development. I'd be going after Saros. Now, Barry Trotz has told most teams, I'm not trading Saros. I asked Barry Trotz specifically at the GM meetings in September about Saros having, basically at this point, 1.5 years left on his deal. And he said, I've already talked to their reps about sitting down this summer and extending him. So that's clearly the focus. But that means the only way you get Nashville's attention is a clear overpay. I mean, this is it. This is McDavid, Draisaitl, and a chance to fix it. I'd be going after Saros, not a young goalie that sure could end up being the next Saros, but how do you know for sure?
I can't even fathom what the ask would be for a Saros on 1.5 years on a deal. I can't even think about.
It'd be crazy.
Talk
about Robin Peter to pay Paul. You're going to give up Bouchard. You're going to give up a first-round pick. You're going to give up. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Not even Nuge or something like that. He's probably too old, but multiple first-round picks.
Nashville would want young talent for sure. That's their focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, they don't want to trade him.
I don't know.
Let me be clear. They don't want to trade Saros. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It's tricky. You go around because the challenge for Edmonton is that they're not in a position to sort of take flyers. Even on a guy as promising as Askarov, you're going to invest all that in there. They need him to be great this year, or
that's my point.
Sorry, they need him to be average. And can you trust that? Who can you trust that's going to be average or slightly better than average?
I'm struggling.
Just so hard.
I'm struggling. This is what I mean. This is why I want.
I go get Varlamov in the island, but he's not going to be available. That would be a perfect guy to go get.
Right.
But they're not going to give him up. He probably wouldn't go there anyways. There is that other part of the equation for Edmonton. No trade provisions on whoever might be out there.
Right.
Respectfully, Canadian teams, Edmonton being in Canada, have a lot of players, no trade provisions on them, even with the McDavid-Draisaitl dynamic. So that's the other part of going to get established players who have no trade protection.
Yeah, like for example,
oftentimes Edmonton's are on those lists.
And for example, John Gibson, and people are pretty mixed on him. I think he's still a really good goalie who's had, pretty bad defense in front of him the last few years. But whatever you think of him, again, he's got no trade provision. He's an American guy. Like, is he really waiting to go to Edmonton? So yeah, that's a great point, MJ. It's not just find the guy, but then it's like, does that guy have power to say no?
Find the guy, overpay to get him, and then make sure he wants to get there. And then you pray that he performs like the way that you hope that he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
and then Johnny,
they basically they did this already with Campbell, and they missed badly, right? They took a swing and they missed terribly.
But in terms of the to-do list, then you also have to come up with the assets to move along with Jack Campbell to get him out. So you talk about the assets you got to pay to get a good goalie.
Right.
And now you got to package assets to move Campbell out. It's going to be expensive to fix. But that's what
Which
happens.
is why I'm bargain basement shopping, going to catch lightning in the bottle. Like Alex Lyon got Florida into the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm trying to catch lightning in a bottle on $1 million, and I'm going to buy Jack Campbell out this summer, and I can't afford to give up everything it's going to take to get rid of that guy, plus bring the other guy in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare situation that they're trying to unpack.
Tough to envision that things get better in Edmonton with McDavid and Draisaitl middling as they are right now. And when I say middling, I mean by their standards, right? Expectations are sky high for these players. I don't think McDavid is healthy. We keep asking him and he keeps saying he's fine. But as I watch him every night, I think there's something going on here. Draisaitl, I don't know that there's an injury there, but Johnny, the numbers are mind-numbing. Neither of these guys anywhere near the top 10 in points per game. Like it's stunning, the fall offensively for both of these players.
I mean, we're talking about 170 points for McDavid in the preseason show. Like, there was no expectation that either one of these guys would do anything but 50 goals and 120 plus points. Now, I might have suggested there might be some regression because everyone in Edmonton had a career year last year, right? From the power play to the shooting percentages to all those things. So, there is maybe some of that, but like regression for Connor McDavid still leaves him as the best player. That's the part. Like I watch and, last year maybe it's a tough year to compare it to because it was so special, but you watched him last year and there was never, Ryan, there's never 2 games in a row where he wasn't like, oh my God, look how good this guy is. Mm-hmm. And now you watch him and it's like, oh yeah, he's good, but he's not like a supernova force that the other team just cannot deal with. And, he's not getting the same looks. The shot looks he's not getting around the net.
It's in the hands, Johnny. I'm telling you, it's in the hands. The number of pucks that he's bobbling and his shot, and look at his face-off stats.
And even his passing, which is the best in the world, a little fine touch passing by his standards, again, better than 90% of the league, but not up to what you expect him to be. But I don't know, if he is healthy, then it's almost a bigger head scratcher. Mm-hmm. And if he actually is healthy, then you're like, I don't know what's going on. You almost hope he's not quite right because that would at least offer up an explanation, Pierre.
And there's so many players you can look at in the Oilers saying regression. I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is, at least outside of your market, Ryan has escaped blame mostly, but he was so unbelievable.
Well, third highest power play point total in the league last year, right?
Yeah.
And the power play's cooled off considerably from where it was. So that's going to hit him hard.
I think he was instrumental in what allowed the Oilers to do last year, matchups and all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And, he's another player that's regressed, and I think that's hurt them. But I'll tell you what, I'm not ready to write off this Oilers team. And one of the things that I looked at yesterday is that if you look at the bottom of the Western Conference playoff race, it's so far shaping up to be a bit of a weird year where we've got some teams that haven't contended in a long time trying to get in there and other teams struggling. But this could be one of the few years in a long time where the 8th spot could be a low point total, potentially. And that, if you're grasping at straws and trying to look for a path for the Oilers, I actually think because it's over now to be top 3 in the Pacific in my mind, but I think they still have a shot at a wild card spot in part because of this, Arizona and all these teams looking at that.
Muddy middle.
They're
Yeah,
staring up at Anaheim, Arizona, St. Louis, Seattle.
Right.
That's who
But
they're
those are all
seeing when they look
catchable
up.
teams, right?
They're catchable
Like
teams.
Anaheim's going to cool off.
Yeah.
Arizona's going to be better, but are they going to get 95? They made up with 89. Like I think Pierre's point's well made. Like, does 90 get you in?
Right.
And then you start running the numbers, what it takes to get to 90, whatever that is, 42 and 28 or something for them to get to around 90. So, yeah, that's kind of where they're at. I'm with you, Pierre, but you know what? I will say this. There are 2 more weeks of playing crappy from almost
Being dead in the water.
too far away from them.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Right?
I wouldn't even give them 2 weeks. Like another 10 days of this. You know, like it's their season is very much hanging in the balance here, and we don't want to be dramatic, right? Especially when you're talking about people's jobs. We don't take that stuff lightly. But if somehow they don't beat the San Jose Sharks tonight, I mean, like nothing is off the table at that point.
Yeah.
It's all like it's crazy. You'd think like it's honestly. I'm a player right now, and you're thinking, who's the one team I'd like to play if we had to win? Of course, you're going to say San Jose because they're awful.
Yeah.
But who's the one team that there is more pressure than any other team to make sure you do win? It's the San Jose Sharks. Like if you don't win, sure the upside is there because they're bad, but the downside, if you don't beat San Jose, who are playing a back-to-back, like it is Pierre.
Right.
It already like. You know, what's that meme with the little guy in the school table with the fire all around him? Everything's fine. No, everything won't be fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen,
GIF, not a meme. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating. A lot of pressure.
I don't think Oilers management sees a team that's given up on its coach right now. But I can't tell you what that loss would do. And again, the Oilers have a fascinating setup right now where, you know, you got an owner that really cares about his team, like a lot of owners. But I think at times Daryl Cates can be, you know, tough to work for. I think, is that a fair comment, Ryan? So this, you know, this would be an interesting time.
He's passionate.
Yeah. You got Paul Coffey, who has a lot of influence there. You got a new boss in Jeff Jackson, who clearly I think would feel the pressure to right this ship. And you think about his relationship with Connor McDavid. And then you got Ken Holland.
Yeah, Holland in the last year of his deal.
And I made that point in my piece in The Athletic because I wasn't trying to point something out that was. I'm just saying sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. He's a lame duck GM. And you know, we made such a big deal in Toronto last year for different reasons, but that Kyle Dubas was on the last year of his deal. It ended up having an unbelievable impact, I think, on the drama in Toronto. That he was on the last year of his deal. Now, this is different because Ken Holland was, I think, Ryan, you may agree or disagree, I think it was always wanting to do the 5 years and then move on, whether he's an advisor with the Oilers or not, we'll see. But so there's nothing dramatic here, but it's still a fact that the GM of the team has months left on his contract while all this is happening. It just adds to all the sort of the layers of it.
Ryan, I'm curious about this. You're around these guys more than Pierre or I might be. The very obvious frustration venting from the top players, from the coach last game against Vancouver. Is that good? Is that a good thing, do you think? Knowing the players, like, is that a good thing that they're sort of swinging away and pushing back and whatever?
Yeah, I think it's an indication of just how high the frustration level is. I think it's an indication that they don't feel like they have the answers at their fingertips. There's a lot of confidence in this group, right? They've done a lot of pretty incredible things offensively, and their mojo is gone. So they're kind of swinging in the wind right now a little bit is what I sense. You know what, Johnny? All that stuff we saw at the end of that last game, and I'm not talking about McDavid here, but there was nothing that came out of any of those melees where I'm like, oh, there it is. There's a team that's really saying we've had enough and we're going to galvanize and stick together. It was a bunch of posturing. It was a bunch of face washing in the corner. Connor McDavid was into it in the corner, took way too long for anybody to get in there with him. It was a bunch of posturing. Other than Zach Hyman jumping on JT Miller, it was a bunch of meaningless posturing to me. Right. There was no line drawn in the sand by that group that night.
I think you probably said it. They're searching and they can't find it.
They can't find it. All right.
They're trying, but they can't find it.
It's been like the Alberta podcast so far. So we got to move on. Let's go around the league. And because we've gone long, we'll do some quick hitter style because I know you guys love this. And some of these from the brilliant brain of the Quizmaster. So first quick hitter, Austin Matthews has more goals, 312 over the first 493 games of his career than Alex Ovechkin. Matthews will Matthews ultimately be regarded as the best goal scorer, if not the greatest, in NHL history? So in the same number of games, Matthews has scored more.
No, because Ovi's done that same sort of clip for almost, the better part of 15 years. Maybe he might have the highest ceiling over the first 7 years, but trying to stay healthy is a challenge in itself, Pierre. I just don't know. I can't see anyone getting 800. I just can't see it, as great as Austin Matthews is. So it's going to be probably not for me.
I could care less. I cannot wrap my mind around that question. There's so much news to get to, and that's what we're talking about right now. Oh, my God.
Come on. Well, Matthew, the goal scoring prowess is impressive. Same point of his career, he's got more goals than Alex Ovechkin. And some who can process more than one thing at a time thought that was interesting, Pierre.
Okay. Next.
Don't give Pierre gum because he won't walk.
I know. He's lost it. He's falling asleep. Okay, Pierre. You know what? You just earned yourself the first answer on this next one. Since you want to be in the moment, can't be much more in the moment than this, bud. Who's the most likely to be let go before the end of the season? Woodcroft or DJ Smith?
Oh. I think
that's a face punch for Pierre. He doesn't.
Yeah. It's hard to because it's not what you think it is with these things.
Tough.
Having been brought behind the scenes on how these decisions are made, you'd be surprised sometimes how.
I'll go since Pierre's thinking about it. I think it's DJ.
Yeah.
I think the new ownership kind of president sort of GM is circling there. And I think even though they're off to a better start than Edmonton, it feels like they need the problems that are plaguing Ottawa still have plagued them for years and years and years. And I think you can make a case that, maybe some coaching might have something to do with that. I play with DJ, don't want it to happen. But I think if I had to say, I'd probably say DJ.
And at the end of the day, that's the easier move because he's on an expiring deal, which often plays into it.
Yeah. And both management teams are looking for reasons not to have to do it. That's right. Definitely the case in Edmonton. Yeah. Neither one wants to. This isn't fait accompli. Both management staffs are uncomfortable that they're even having these conversations. So a bit of a turnaround, especially in Edmonton. And I think that gets avoided. Okay, Pierre, we'll give you this one because this is right in your wheelhouse. Where's Patrick Kane going to go? Because as you have been reporting, it's been heating up a little bit, bud. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, just to remind people, I wrote about this last night. So Pat Brisson last night told me that they've now begun the actual process of talking to teams. They've spoken to some coaches and GMs this week. The process could last a couple weeks. There's no timeline on him signing or making a decision. They're taking their time. But the key thing here that Pat Brisson said is they're limiting this process to 5 or 6 teams, quote unquote. Even though there were like 12 teams that reached out in July. So they've already cut down the list. Obviously, he would not share who those 5 or 6 teams are. But I will tell you this. I bet you that list looks different today in November than it would have in September. Because a lot of this is, I think, Patrick Kane wanted to go to a team that has a chance to win. But, listen, I think that... Again, without honestly not knowing who's leading the fray right now, I think there's some obvious teams. Buffalo has come back and made themselves, into the mix now. That's his hometown team, and I know that Kevin Adams has reached out. The New York Rangers, where he finished the year, Detroit with Steve Yzerman. There's some fits there. I will say this too. Teams are really going to want to know medically. I know he's about to get cleared, but they're going to want to take a look at him. Obviously, hip resurfacing is a tough thing to come back from. But Patrick Kane sounds like he's doing pretty good on that front.
I think the team, as great as Patrick Kane is, and assuming he's healthy and productive, you got to make sure he fits your style, your system, right? You can't just plug him into anything, expect you're going to get Hall of Famer Patrick Kane. But I'd love to see him in LA, who are a very good team, who have the puck an awful lot, and would be fun to watch him go. or maybe back in New York. I'm picking those two markets. Two big American markets for a big American star would be fun.
Right, the Kings with
story in Vancouver,
Arvidsson out on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. The story in Vancouver has been a great one. One of the better ones in the National Hockey League this season, 9-2-1. Jamie McLennan talks about the spine of their team, right? Demko, Hughes, Pettersson. I mean, you have those three. That's one of each of the big ones. Add Rick Tocchet and Patrick Alvin into the mix, guys. Who do you think gets the most credit for what has happened in Vancouver this year, Johnny?
Thatcher Demko. I mean, the most important position. He's the most important player. His goal save above expected is monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rick Talk, and then probably Talk, I guess, because Talk seemingly got that team on the same page and feeling good about themselves, and everyone's sort of getting along and playing well. But I'm not giving anything up to the upper management just yet. But yeah, the goaltender. I mean, he's such a difference maker every night, because you look at Vancouver, it's not like they are playing as well as their record suggests. They are resulting as well as their record suggests.
Right.
And that's different. And I think a lot of that resulting is because of Thatcher Demko.
I love the way you put that, resulting. Yeah. That's good.
I'll say Rick Tocchet. I think the culture shift and the mentality of that team has really changed under Rick Tocchet. That doesn't mean that you can fight off the analytics over time and all these things that Mike Johnson's talking about. But their body language is different this year under Rick Tocchet, and I really believe in that stuff that matters. And if you want to talk, by the way, about Demko, you want to talk about a microcosm of two franchises of why the goalie matters, is that game the other night between the Oilers and
yeah.
I mean, the Oilers are
19
first
to
period
4
was
over
ridiculous.
Vancouver early. Yeah.
Down 2-1.
Yeah, the Oilers were back, baby. The Oilers were back. Did you see the way they looked? And Thatcher Demko was like, "Yeah,
we're okay."
Bought his team the time to break the will, and it didn't.
And I
take
can't
much
believe we
to
haven't
break
even
the will.
said Quinn Hughes here, because Quinn Hughes, if the season stopped today, Quinn Hughes gets the Norris. I think he gets the Hart if it stopped today. That's how good he's been for Vancouver.
Wow.
He beat out his brother.
That'd be something.
Mm-hmm.
Man, oh man. Brothers, when was the last time brothers would have been in contention for the Hart Trophy?
Well, the Richards?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
That's a good one. Okay, lastly, Pierre, we're going to wrap here. Brock McGillis, friend of the podcast. We've had him on before, and it was a great interview, boy. He and Bane Pettinger came on with us last year. The first openly gay men's professional hockey player is embarking on a mission this upcoming hockey season to ensure the game of hockey takes important strides to be a welcoming space. So here's what he's doing. I love this. Speaking to 100 high school-aged minor hockey teams in 100 days. So 100 teams in 100 days, spreading the message. Stops include Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, spanning from November 23rd to 2023 to February 2024. You know, it's easier to hop on podcasts and spread the message that way. It's another thing to go get on planes, trains, automobiles, vehicles, and to go put in that kind of commitment. Pretty cool here, Pierre.
I told Brock yesterday, we chatted, and I said, I hope you got Marriott points, because you'll be collecting Marriott points on this trip.
Just don't travel with Johnny. Brock, do not travel with Mike Johnson.
I'll
he
wait
will
for
leave
him.
you high and dry.
But all kidding aside, this guy's tireless efforts to make the game more inclusive. And also, this is what Brock McGillis truly, he's not a shouting from the rooftops guy that, tweet about this. What he really wants to do is put in the work and meet people and talk to people and try to have them hear his experience, what he has to say in this space, not in front of the cameras, behind the scenes. And he's spoken with a number of NHL teams too the last few years. That's what he's interested. That's how he wants to bring change. And I got the alphabet thing behind me, and that's what he started with Bane Pettinger. That's where he believes the work is, not for the cameras. And I give that guy credit.
I'll just say this. That's an amazing endeavor. I think that's probably the best place to go. Younger, grassroots, people who need to have their maybe eyes and ears opened up a little bit. But I'll also say this, and I don't want to be naive. I think, in large part, when a player decides to come out in the NHL, I think he will be universally embraced and supported And I don't think, I mean, not across, like, I know we saw last year, like, the different things, like, I get it. There's going to be the odd outlier, but I don't, like, I think, I'm almost looking forward to whoever has the courage to want to do that, because I think I think the hockey world might surprise, the hockey players will surprise people. They'll be like, yeah, we're here for you, but we don't really care. I think that will be the overriding sentiment for 98% of the players.
You know, and I wouldn't say I disagree with you, Johnny, but what I would say is, I mean, the percentages show that they're out there.
There's gay players playing now.
And what I would say is that I want that to be the case for this game that we love. I really do. But there's a reason it hasn't happened yet, right? There's a reason that it hasn't happened yet. When the game, when that truly will be the case, I agree with you. I think that the vast majority, and it'll be a universally embraced person. And good for Brock McGillis to get out there and do what he's doing, right? Just taking great actions here.
And it's not just about the players. You know, there are gay players in the league today. It's not just about them in my mind. It's also about not losing some young athletes who actually give up on the game because they don't feel like they belong. That's a huge part here. I mean, that's why the courage of Luke Prokop and Brock McGillis and May Benninger and so on, that's about setting up the next generations so that athletes know, hey, I got a place in this sport too.
All right. Johnny, I'm sure you got a plane to catch, buddy. We'll let you get yourself all...
I've got a nap to take.
Big nap. Big nap.
I'm a big napper. There's nothing like a good 40-minute afternooner for me.
40 minutes, I am a Hall of Fame caliber napper. My naps are like 3.5 hours.
What? Don't you have children? How did you do that when your kids were young?
They go to school. That's what schools are for.
Yeah. Half hour max for me, and then I start thinking, what am I doing?
I bought in the sleep doctor in Arizona way back 20 years ago. He said you have to nap in 90-minute cycles because your REM cycle gets to the top. You want to wake up at 90 minutes.
It's science.
So if you're going to nap before a game, you have to wake up at 90 or get all the way to 3 hours. No brainer to me. I got to go 3 hours. Doc told me
You know what though, Johnny?
I got to go 3 hours.
You know what though, buddy? You're not napping. You go back to bed. That's what you do. Anything beyond 40 minutes and you're not napping, you've gone back to bed.
That's what I'm doing. Good night.
Go back to bed. Great job today, gentlemen. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for your downloads and your subscriptions. Thanks for listening. Much appreciated. Hey, head over to iTunes. Leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think of the work we're doing here on Got Your Back. For LeBrun, Johnson, I'm Rishaug. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers, everyone.